Hello, bonjour, namaste. Welcome to the Canada and India show, where we meet the people that make up the vibrant Canada-India relationship. Every week, we interview leaders in their fields to dive into who they are and what drives them. From the arts, to trade, to human rights, we will discover together how rich and diverse this relationship really is.
Hi, I'm Annie Dubé, Canada's Consul General in Mumbai, India, and you are listening to the Canada in India show. Thank you for joining us. Today, I'm excited to chat with Parmesh Shahani, the Vice President of Godrej Industries and the head of India Culture Lab. The India Culture Lab is an award-winning experimental idea space based at the Godrej headquarters in Mumbai. We're here today speaking on Parmesh's ties with Canada, cultural advocacy, the evolution of LGBTQ rights in India, and Queeristan, Parmesh's new book on LGBTQ inclusion in corporate India. Okay, this is season 2 of the Canada in India show, and today we have Parmesh Shahani, who's heading the Godrej Culture Lab with us. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Annie. Thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of Canada, all things Canadian. We were just having a discussion before this about how cute Canadian men are. This is not that podcast. Unfortunately, to everyone who's listening, you have to listen to another one for that. But I'm doing very, very well.
I won't comment on the looks of Canadian men, but just saying.
Well, I've been very lucky in that department. I met some real cuties.
So what brought you first to Canada to meet these cuties?
Well, actually, I met some cuties at MIT when I was studying in America, even before I went to Canada. There's one particular one from Saskatchewan. Devin, if you're listening, this is you. No, I mean, I've been going to Canada now for so many years. I first went to Toronto to speak at a conference at OCAD, the Ontario College of Art and Design, and it was so beautiful. The building itself and the interdisciplinary perspective on knowledge around design was wonderful. Subsequently, I've gone, so often. I've spoken at Banff, which is, gorgeous, and as you know.
Not only the men, right?
Not only, no. Even the scenery. Like Canada has cute men, but it's also got a couple of other things going for it, like beautiful nature. Even the men actually have very good natures. So it's full of good nature. Then I went to Montreal, where I had my best ever pastrami sandwich at Schwartz.
I'll have to figure out a way to bring that to
India.
Please
bring Schwartz to India. I mean, instead of doing all these like deals and through pension funds and oil and this and that, you should just bring Schwartz to India. Come on. Do some stuff for like us foodies. And actually, off late, I've been going to Vancouver quite a lot because I'm a TED senior fellow and I've been going. So I've done like 4 TEDs, I think, back to back in Vancouver.
And what is your topic of choice when you go to these TED Talks?
So I go as a senior fellow. So I've just been very lucky and going just to listen, to be part of the pre-conference. So the TED fellows and senior fellows, we all have our own pre-conference. So we do things. In Vancouver, we've gone to the circus. We've gone to UBC and made food together. We've done, we've had like incredible dinners in Chinatown. The TED community itself is wonderful. And, the fellows and senior fellows are from all around the world. So, every summer we've kind of made Vancouver our home. And as you know, ever since the TED conference has shifted to Vancouver, it's done so much for the city, by its presence. So Vancouver kind of feels like my summer home now.
Which is a great place to be.
Which is a great place to be in. Yeah.
After your studies at MIT, you came back to India and then you worked for a magazine called Verve. What was your experience like for a luxurious magazine?
So I did a bunch of things. So when I finished MIT, I was helping run a think tank with my professor, Henry Jenkins, called the Convergence Culture Consortium, where we studied media convergence as a cultural process. So the impact of digital media on the lives of those using it, as opposed to technology, which is, where will the technology go? That wasn't our interest. So what media do young people consume personally on their phones, and what media do they, say, hang out and watch together in cinemas, for example? We're looking at things like that. And what happens to music when it becomes a list of files on your phone versus something you listen to in a concert hall? Just things like that. We're looking at the cultural impact of technology. And so when I finished, I could have actually been anywhere. I was actually recruited. Microsoft really wanted me to come join them in Seattle, amongst other things. But I don't know. I think it was a bunch of many things, including watching a Bollywood film called Swades with Shah Rukh Khan in it. And in the film, Shah Rukh Khan comes back to India from NASA to help electrify a village. And in my romantic idea of, returning home to doing something, I decided that I wanted to actually come back to India. I actually started working at Mahindra on a bunch of things around venture capital and other forms of innovation. And while I was there, since Anand's wife Anuradha also ran a magazine called Verve, I decided to also help run the fashion magazine. So it was an interesting surreal life of spending my days in a venture fund looking at India through a particular lens, then spending my evenings at a fashion magazine looking at the same changing India but through a different lens. It was a very hard life. It involved going to lots of parties and meeting lots of models and dressing up in all
typical
these
Bombay life.
fabulous clothes. But what to do, all the difficult things you have to do for work. So it was fun.
And from there, you ended up at Godrej, starting the Culture Lab here.
Yeah.
And through the Culture Lab, you've been really using this platform to bring the mindset forward, not only within Godrej, but within the city and hopefully within the country.
Yeah.
So what type of impact are you trying to create through that work? Or first, what is Godrej Culture Lab? And then after that, the impact you want to create?
So the Godrej India Culture Lab is a space that began about 9 years ago to very broadly cross-pollinate different conversations on what it means to be modern and Indian. We'll never know, so the lab will continue forever. And what we do is we do a bunch of things, all of which are free and open for the citizens of Mumbai and, of India at large. We do public programming around topics that we believe are very pertinent, and also around issues that we know that people are not having conversations around.
So what are the issues that you want to focus on?
Gender, sexuality, urban-rural circularities, inequality, the environment, climate change, multiple ways of telling history. We're very big on plural. We'll think of everything as, there are histories of India, not just a history. So our approach is in that sense very plural, very inclusive. And we like to focus on marginality. We like to look at what are the conversations that are being had. So our programming is around that. So over the years, we've actually managed to do some incredible historic and relevant events for the city. I would say that, a format of the pop-up museum has been something that we brought to Mumbai and that, since then people have been following. So even immediately after we started, we had something called Museum of Memories, where we took an old 70,000 square foot warehouse that was going to be demolished the next day. And we filled it with art, performance, screenings, food, flower holi with 50 kilos of flowers that people threw on each other. And then the next day, the entire building was demolished with all of this art and everything in it, right? So, right from that opening of doing an event that destruction is near, but then how do you value the ephemeral? How do you value transience? So what should really matter? Does permanence matter? And I'm thinking of 10 years after that, when Rahul Mehrotra, a couple of months ago, who's the Dean of Graduate Studies at Harvard School of Architecture and Design, he was talking about the same things. What is permanence? What should our architecture be for today's day and age, right? Something like the Partition Museum, which we did in 2017, when the whole country was saying 70 years of Indian independence. We built a 3-day museum that understood partition, because 70 years ago, the subcontinent was also divided quite randomly, with not much thinking and planning. And the lives of people in 3 countries at this point changed forever at that time.
And families were divided.
Families were divided, and the legacies of that partition continue, in very, very disturbing and problematic ways. So we wanted to, examine that moment of partition through various ways. So we had 15 collaborators, schools, colleges, museums, collectives, magazines, designers, and it was incredible. We built a 3-day museum that thousands of people came and saw. It was built not just by people in Mumbai and India, but we had collaborators in Pakistan and Bangladesh as well. And we had wonderful conversations around our common history and ways ahead for the future. So I think that, the Culture Lab has deeply impacted the city and the country by doing this kind of fierce programming. Over the past few years, we've said that we don't just want to do events, we want to do resource building. So we've started fellowship programs for Indian and international students who want to come and spend summers with us. We have a specific training program for students that are studying in humanities colleges in Mumbai. So only if you're in the humanities in Mumbai can you apply, because we're fed up of all these internships which are just for like science and MBA people.
Right.
And we believe that people who study in the humanities are often underserved, or certainly they're much less confident of their abilities. Whereas, it's humanities that I believe is going to save the world. So we've started India's only humanities scholarship or humanities summer training program, and it's great. We're in the third year of that. We produce white papers. We recently produced a white paper on transgender employment. We produce maps. We have MumbaiCultureMap.com, which has 200 places in city that you can go to, places you would have never imagined or heard of. So from being a producer of events, we've started imagining ourselves as a, cultural catalyst for the city, for the country. And it's been an incredible journey. And I have to thank Godrej for believing in this idea, for housing it, and for giving us, the freedom to curate as fearlessly as we have over the years and to be doing all of this. Some years ago when we started, as I'm sure people ask even now, what does it mean for this 125-year-old business group to be funding,
And it's a great business group that has brought India through a new era, like through consumer products and among other things. So it's a very Indian group now expanding in Africa and Latin America.
And all over the world. And what does it mean for a business group to be funding things like that? And my answer is, who else but Godrej, which is so invested in the idea of India, which has its origins even in the Swadeshi movement of so many years ago. Who else could see the vision and fund it and say that this is something that we, because we're all invested in the future of this country. And
And you're touching on a few really, sensitive points, in fact, because last year, 377 was read down in terms of decriminalizing homosexuality here in India. So from there, how do you bring the mindset forward for a greater inclusion of some groups who used to be marginalized?
Yeah.
Is this what you try to do through the Cultural Lab?
So the Cultural Lab is a public space. So of course, we do cultural programming, but you have to look at our programming to understand that we come from a very particular perspective and point of view. We are about LGBT inclusion. We are a strongly feminist space. We do believe that this dichotomy between what is urban and what is rural is fake. We believe in circularity. We believe in hyphenation. So our programming and our values and our orientation is very, very clear. So we've been LGBT friendly, we've been LGBT inclusive, and we've been a strong advocate for LGBTQ rights right from the beginning. I happen to be gay myself, so it's deeply personal. And we're happy to have, so many members of our staff happen to be queer. We're lucky to be located at Godrej, which is, a queer friendly company. So for us, it's, it's deeply personal, and, I find it astounding that so many others, say in India, aren't, that so many other companies or so many other institutions aren't. And so what we've been doing for the past few years is, through our programming, through our white papers, actually through helping Godrej change itself and become one of India's leading LGBTQ inclusive companies, demonstrate to others that how being inclusive really makes good sense for everyone that's involved. First of all, it's deeply rooted in Indian values. Being inclusive is very much part of our Indian culture. Whether you look at our mythological texts, whether you look at history, whether you look at everything, right? To be Indian means to be inclusive. In fact, homophobia is a British Western concept. So we've been trying to share that with people. And over the past few years, I think because of, the events we've done, the conversations we've empowered, the white papers we've written, and the way Godrej itself has, ramped up and changed its policies. You're visiting us at Godrej 1. We have,
great space, by the way.
Thank you.
Gosh, it doesn't feel like the usual corporate offices that we see in...
Yeah, it's an idea space. It's a space where tomorrow's India is being built, right? So we have all gender bathrooms here, for example. If someone joins us and they wish to transition, Godrej will pay for, up to whatever the amount is insured for the transition. So in terms of policies, practice, culture, we're trying to make Godrej into like a model company. So I think this is deeply personal to us. And of course, the fact that a 125-year-old, respected Indian company is doing this, the ripple effects are amazing. So just personally, some years ago, I was sharing Godrej's journey with people at Tata Steel. And 6 months after my visit there, Tata Steel changed its policies completely. And so now it's two of India's oldest companies are becoming inclusive. So many other companies have changed as well. And I think so I think the role that corporations have, either in funding spaces like the Culture Lab, where we can talk about issues openly, or in changing themselves and becoming role models of the kind of country that we want to live in, whether it's through their policies or things like that, is huge. I think in today's India, corporations are deeply responsible on doing good and being good. And that's what I've tried to push for, over the past 9 years. And I think I've been reasonably successful. But of course, there's a lot more change that we need to do.
This is fantastic. And you're touching on a point. I know you're writing a book and you're making the case of why it is important to bring together people of diverse background, but also you have kind of a recipe or the few steps to follow. You want to touch a bit on that?
Well, first of all, I'd say everyone buy the book when it comes out some months from now. It's called Queeristan, LGBTQ Inclusion in Corporate India. And it's going to
Queeristan.
Queeristan.
Okay, excellent.
Because I believe we're already living in Queeristan, actually. If you look at all around us, there's amazing stuff happening. It's a very positive book. It tells you my journey. It tells you the journey of so many others. But it's also fused with, very strong business case for inclusion. For example, it's a $5 trillion economy, LGBTQ. If you just add up LGBTQ people all over the world, it would be like the fourth largest country in the world, and it would be a $5 trillion economy. Just to give you a perspective on what that means, right? That's the LGBTQ market in India is $200 billion with a B. The cost of homophobia in India, according to the World Bank in 2016, was $32 billion, which was about 1.3% of the GDP that year. So if any government wants to improve GDP, just be inclusive and you'll have a big GDP bump.
That's the same rationale for women as well.
That's the same rationale for women and for any kind of inclusion. So, the book tells you, it makes a very strong case for inclusion, whether in numbers, we have enough research now that says that being inclusive makes you more innovative, obviously, and there's so many examples of it. I mean, even if you look at gender, right, there are so many companies which have 10 men deciding a product for women. On what basis will they decide that product, right? At the very least, you can have one woman who is actually going to use that product. I mean, you don't need like a PhD degree to tell you that if 50% of your market is women, you better have some women on your team. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's basic stuff.
And you see that happening in India?
I see that happening more and more in India. So the book essentially makes the business case that, being inclusive is good for money. It makes you more innovative. It increases, your reputation amongst millennials and young people and so on.
More innovation happening.
All of that. And it also gives you steps that you can do to be inclusive, right? From how you can change your policies to what you can do in terms of, sensitization and so on. So it's like a recipe book meets like my own like journal and memoir. So it's good fun. I'm having a blast writing it.
Wow.
So, it'll come out next year and I'm just so happy that it's going to be released because I get so many calls right now from companies and other institutions saying, please come and tell us how to be inclusive. So once the book comes out, I'm just going to say, darlings, read the book so that I can go to my salon in the morning for my blow dry.
You don't seem to require that much work with your hair. You have beautiful hair and it seems to fall into place where it should be.
We should have had video with this podcast. But I do have beautiful hair.
This is hilarious.
Yeah.
I love that. So from the book, it's going to come out probably around April 2020 or something.
Yeah, it's going to come out like sometime mid-year. The sooner the better. And then, we're going to go around the world with it.
Excellent.
And just really, really excited that we're at a moment of great change and great possibility. And I'm writing about all the good stuff in the book as well, right? Mm-hmm. About queer-owned businesses and, state governments which are providing transgender-friendly policies and, candidates, spokespeople of political parties that are trans and queer and things like that. Because often in the news, and, this is happening all over the world, but often in the news, there's so much bad stuff going around. And this is not to say that bad stuff does not happen in India to queer people, right? Our lives are very, very difficult. And until recently, we had Section 377, so we were criminals. So there's still a lot of bad stuff happening. But I also really focusing on the good stuff, the positive stuff, the exciting stuff in the book, and trying to showcase that as a model for, the other things that can come.
So when you say you're focusing on the positive or the hopeful, what is your biggest hope for the LGBTQ community in India?
I mean, I just, sitting in the corporate world, I would like every major Indian company to have LGBTQ inclusive policies. Right now, most don't. I would like representation everywhere. I would like the law to rapidly change. Right now, there's decriminalization, but there's no anti-discrimination law in India. Certainly, there's no marriage equality. I mean, I write about this in the book as well. I was like, imagine if you create marriage equality in India and queer people can marry. Think of how much that will explode the bridal market and the economy. I'm thinking 5% GDP growth.
Wow.
Because, queer people, I mean, we're
They
not
like
going to
a party.
of course. And, we're not just going to do 3 events, we'll do 8 events. We're going to not just do 2 costume changes, there'll be 20. So it's going to have ripple effects everywhere. So if you're Canadian pension fund and you're listening to this, just fund some industries that will help all of this.
There's definitely a business case to be made.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm looking for all of it. Look, I'm a honest, law-abiding, tax-paying citizen of my country. Why should I not have the same rights that everyone else has? It's as simple as that. My constitution guarantees me that. Why shouldn't I? And in that, I mean, I must say that we really look towards Canada as a source of inspiration and as a role model. We look towards leaders like Prime Minister Trudeau. Gosh, he's just so presidential. Talking about cute Canadian men, can we just say that, Canada, it starts all the way from the top? So, you can have leaders like that to inspire leaders all around the world. And a lot of, the progress that we've had in the LGBTQ movement in India has been by looking at progressive countries like Canada who stand up for the rights of LGBTQ citizens, not just in Canada itself, but who, through offices like yours, advocate for equality throughout. So I've been so proud to see how y'all support the Kashish LGBTQ Film Festival, to see you and your team, at LGBTQ events across the country saying that this makes sense, this is right, and Canada supports this. And you'd have no idea of how much that has meant to the queer movement in the country and how much that impacts us and when we fight for the rights that we want to have here, because we look towards Canada and say, look, if all Canadian citizens can be equal, certainly all Indian citizens can be equal as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Justin.
You mentioned that some laws would need to be changed for equality of marriage and all. There's the law, but there's also societal pressure.
Yeah.
How do you see this evolving in a way that it's going to be more inclusive? And I'm not talking about the laws, because the laws can be changed, but at the end of the day, your family or your peers, there's a need for acceptance. And do you see that changing rapidly?
I see media changing a lot. So, for example, this year we had a film called Ek Ladki Ko Dekha To Aisa Laga, which had Sonam Kapoor, one of the biggest Bollywood stars, playing a lesbian who comes out to her father and her father accepts her. That's huge. There's queer presence in TV serials, there's queer presence on, with things like Netflix, Amazon, and so on. There are so many complex and wonderful storylines. So I'm seeing media changing a lot. I'm seeing, conversations being had in people's homes more and more. I'm seeing workplaces changing a lot, like Godrej and so many others. So I think I completely agree that societal change is what is going to drive a lot of this forward. And within societal change itself, particularly, I think thinking of, this parent-child relationship, because so much of Indian society is based on, parents, parental approval. Parents seem to want to have a say or force themselves into having a say into marriage and love and relationships. So I think, pushing that and having more open conversations with parents. There are great initiatives like Swikar, for example, which is a collective of Indian parents of LGBTQ people who have come together, who are always on TV, in the press, saying, we as Indian parents have accepted our queer kids, you can too. Mm-hmm. So I see a lot more of that happening. I see a lot more visibilization of that happening. I see a lot. And I think society will only change when it sees role models. So, I see a lot more of that coming. Just as other companies change when they saw Godrej, other parents will change when they see other parents. Other world leaders will change when they see Justin Trudeau being so inclusive. That's the whole point, right? You have to model good behavior to know that it's okay and that you can do it too. Mm-hmm. So I see that happening more and more. I hope it happens faster, but I do see that happening more and more.
Will we see you soon again in Canada?
Sure. I've just been all over. So
maybe for smoked meat in Montreal or something.
Yeah, but I mean, why don't you just bring shorts to Mumbai? So much easier, but no,
but we hope to see you again soon.
You will see me. Yeah, Canada. I mean, I love Canada, and I don't think I can stay away for very long because I love it so much. So thank you, and thank you for all the great work that you all are doing here.
Thank you to you because you are showcasing arts and culture with a strong social message. And so we discovered through your eyes as well what India will become. So thank you for that.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks. It was absolutely fun.
Loved it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you had as much fun as we did. Please join us next week as I chat with Deval Desai, the country head for Magna International, a great Canadian company in the auto parts sector.
We are thrilled that you shared this time with us today. We'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on our social media channels. On Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, we are at Canada in India. You can listen to all our episodes wherever you get your podcasts, so please do subscribe. Thank you. Merci. Dhanyavad.